Yo, what is good everybody? It's your boy Tej, and in this video I'm going to be showing y'all how to make a beat for Lil Baby and Lil Durk similar to Section 8 and Chichi. The style is going to be something similar to what might have been on Voices of the Heroes or in their producer vlogs. I made the entire beat from scratch, so I'm going to show you all my whole process of making the beat. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. As always, I'll have the finished beat played at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around for that. And with all that out of the way, let's just hop right into the beat. Alright, before I hop into breaking down the sample, I'm going to show you all a quick preview of it. Alright, so for this type of beat, the tempo that I chose was 102 BPM. So for my first melody sound, I went into Contact and went into the Orchestra Complete and got this Strings Ensemble preset. And I believe for all the patterns, I just made the first 4 measures and just duplicated them when I rendered them out as audio clips. And so for the first pattern, I ended up making it in B minor, and I started out by just laying out these kind of like framework notes right here. I just had the metronome on and just had it play, and it was just humming out these notes, and I pretty much just used the B minor scale to just kind of fill in the rest of the notes here. And as you can see, most of the notes kind of fall in this range between like E and B. There wasn't much theoretical thought behind that. I was just penciling in notes within the scale and just kind of putting in what sounded good. For the most part, the notes are pretty similar, and it's just duplicated for the 4 patterns, so it's fairly repetitive. The only thing that gives the melody a little bit of character is just these bass notes down here. And once I had penciled in everything, I hit Alt-R on my keyboard and then adjusted this velocity knob to randomize the velocities, as you can see here. So I exported that as an audio clip, and I dropped that into the playlist, and I pitched it up by 100 cents. And then I started constructing the rest of the sample in C minor. For my next preset, I opened up a similar Strings Ensemble preset, except I opened up like a sustain or a tremolo preset instead. And in here, I just put in a top string melody to kind of go with the original bass melody that we have. It's kind of subtle compared to the original melody, and I didn't want it to be like too overcrowded with the strings and all that, so I wanted to keep it somewhat simple. And then for my next melody sound, I went into Omnisphere and I got this choir preset. And for this one, I pretty much just used the C minor triad as my basis, and I just went in and made minor adjustments. I just made it a suspended 2 chord here by just moving the D sharp down to D, and then sometimes I just have the normal triad and just move G up to G sharp. And for my next melody preset, I opened up Keyscape and got this grand piano preset. And in here, I kind of outlined my bass note patterns. These are the bass notes that I rolled with. I pretty much just used the 1, 6, 5, and 7 in the scale. Once I had those, I copied those down an octave and reduced the velocity a little bit. For these 3 notes, I just copied them and moved them up by 7 half steps. And then lastly, I put in this sub bass, and I more or less just copied the notes from the last pattern, and all I did was just add a couple slide notes just so the transition sounds a little more interesting between each of the notes. And as I mentioned earlier, I rendered each of the stems as individual audio clips and arranged the loop. And once I had done that, I rendered it out as a WAV file and put it into a new FLP. So I took the stems from the melody and I arranged it to my liking here, and I ended up adding the drums and finishing the rest of the beat. I kept the tempo the same, but I did end up pitching the sample up to D minor. Starting off with the first drum sound, I got this combo clap. I primarily wanted the focus to be on the clap hitting on the 3rd beat on every measure, but then I just added these other claps just to accent it. And as you can see, I kind of played around with the velocities a little bit just to add a little more bounce to it. Next, I put in a snare pattern. So the basis of the pattern is these hits right here, and they don't quite hit where they normally would. Like in a typical beat, they kind of hit somewhere a little different. And that's just because the tempo is lower, so it's almost as if you're doing this in, say, like 80 or 90 BPM. And the snare roll, I only use it occasionally. I typically just cut out the last half of this measure when arranging the drums. And this next drum sound is arguably the most important if you want to achieve that section 8 and chichi bounce, and that is the hi-hats. You definitely want to put a lot of thought and effort into it. So for this type of style of section 8 chichi beat, you want to start with a 2-step pattern, but it's not going to be like just putting a normal 2-step in. The hi-hats are really fast. So you're going to take a normal 2-step and then you're going to copy and paste it so that it fills in every single gap here. So all the grid lines in the normal line snap setting are filled. You kind of want to stagger your velocities as you can see here, but also go in on each of the individual rolls and everything that you do and change the velocities or shift it so that it's just slightly different. And for the hi-hats, I put some effectrix on it. I just put in a couple of verses here and a reverb. Next, I added in this rim perk, and it was mainly meant to counter the snare. Next, I added a couple of open hats, the first one being this one. And this hits on the 4th beat of all the odd measures. This one I wasn't really thinking about the placement of it. I just kind of filled in the gaps from the previous one and just kind of placed it where I thought it sounded good with all the rest of the drums. And lastly, I added my 2 808 patterns, and they're pretty much the same. The only difference is that there's just a roll right here. And this is just to kind of descend, because sometimes I use that descend to kind of transition in between different parts of the melody. So again, going back to the same point as the hi-hats, you got to add in your drum sounds as if you were doing this in a lower tempo, like 80 or 90 BPM. Typically in a faster tempo, I'm going to have my first 2 808s hit like this. But again, since we're in a slower tempo, we want something that looks like this. I just kind of added the little accents where I saw fit. At the end, we have that signature 808 roll. I just went to the smallest cell size in the line snapping and just penciled in a few notes. So that's going to do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video and you're able to find it helpful. If you did enjoy it, be sure to leave a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit subscribe. I drop these types of videos about once or twice a week. Leave any recommendations and feedback in the comments below. And that's going to do it for me. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Why don't you run with us, Ted?